So Elon Musk is now a target of the left. Again, like Rogan, he's a target of the left because he refuses to abide by the strictures of political correctness. He says, for example, that capitalism is good and that his company, its growth is good, and that Elizabeth Warren is an idiot, right? He says all of these things publicly. And so it was only a matter of time before the media tried to find an employee to accuse the company of racism, and now this is what they have done. According to the Daily Beast, last week, former Tesla employee Kaylin Barker filed a lawsuit against the electric car maker for allegedly disregarding her complaints of racial discrimination, saying that being black worker at Tesla's renowned California factory is to be forced to step back in time and suffer painful abuses reminiscent of the Jim Crow era. Okay, so first of all, that ain't true. And I'll tell you why that ain't true. Because in the Jim Crow era, you wouldn't have been working at the Tesla factory. It is hilarious to me how people don't seem to understand what Jim Crow was in the first place. The 25-year-old, who is black and gay, claims a white coworker at the company's Lathrop plant called her the N-word and assaulted her with a hot grinding tool. After Barker complained to Human Resources, Tesla allegedly retaliated by withholding her wages. I do not believe this. I straight up don't believe this. The reason I don't believe this is because if someone assaults you with a hot grinding tool, you know what you do? You go to the cops. You don't go to HR, you go to the cops. If someone assaults you with a hot grinding tool, if someone calls you the N-word, you think any HR department in America doesn't fire that person and do a full investigation? Any HR department in America, this is literally their job. And Tesla is a company worth billions and billions and billions. It's the most valuable car maker on planet Earth. You think their HR department is going to blow off a claim that someone called you the N-word at work? Are you kidding me? I don't believe this for half a second. Barker's civil suit is one of multiple cases in recent months to paint a disturbing picture of a hostile work environment for women and people of color at the clean energy giants' factories. And it comes a mere 4 months after the jury awarded another former employee, Owen Diaz, nearly $137 million over racism he encountered in the workplace, which included coworkers hurling racial epithets and telling him to go back to Africa. Now Tesla is facing a civil rights complaint from California regulators over employees' accusations of pervasive racial discrimination. Last month, the California Department of Fair Housing and Employment issued a notice of cause finding and mandatory dispute resolution following an investigation into undisclosed allegations of race discrimination and harassment at unspecified Tesla locations. So, question, this notice of cause finding and mandatory dispute resolution includes, just to get this straight, undisclosed allegations of race discrimination. So they've not been disclosed. We have no idea what the allegations are. At an unspecified Tesla location. So what we now know is something bad allegedly happened at a time in a place. We don't know what the thing is, where it happened, or when. Let's open a government investigation. The agency gave notice that based upon the evidence collected, it believes it has grounds to file a civil complaint against Tesla. As for Diaz's multi-million-dollar case, Tesla's report said the company does not believe the facts and law justify the verdict and that it has requested a retrial or reduction in the jury's award. Tesla's report also noted it received an SEC subpoena last November requesting information on how billionaire CEO Elon Musk was complying with a 2018 settlement with the securities watchdog that required his tweets to be vetted by a company lawyer. So you now have the government cracking down on Elon Musk's tweets. Yes, clearly this is not a power game. This is really just about preventing racial discrimination. It's not a power game in which you find a company you don't like and then you target it with racial discrimination. And then the media whips everybody into a frenzy. And then government regulators of the left decide to come in and crack down on the company. I mean, this is truly frightening stuff. It really is. Now, good for Musk for not surrendering to it. But if you want to see somebody surrender to it, all you have to do is take a look at the NFL. And here's the thing. The philosophy seems to be, if I admit that I am racist, then maybe they will leave me alone. And this is exactly what Roger Goodell, a horrible NFL commissioner, has been doing at the NFL. So, former Dolphins head coach Brian Flores filed a lawsuit this week in Manhattan federal court. We've discussed at length the Brian Flores lawsuit. It's garbage. It's a terrible lawsuit. It looks like it was written in crayon by a 7-year-old. As a lawyer, I can firmly guarantee you, there's not even an allegation of a violation of law breaking. There isn't. All of the statutes that are cited are not justified. There's no class action because the plaintiffs are not similarly situated. Brian Flores himself has said on open TV that he has no justification for suggesting that any specific incident involving him was motivated by race, rather than maybe by the fact that he hasn't developed the Miami Dolphins quarterback and that his record with the Dolphins kind of sucks. He's not that good a coach. Instead, he sued the NFL, and the NFL, because they believe that the publicity is bad, started doing what all these companies, except for Musk, do, and he started self-flagellating. That's exactly what Goodell did. So he issued a memo on Saturday morning to all 32 teams in which he said we must, quote, acknowledge that the results of their efforts to promote diversity with respect to head coaches have been unacceptable. The efforts have been unacceptable because there aren't enough black coaches. 70% of the players are black. Seems like it's acceptable with regard to the players. And by the way, since when is the player pool the coach pool? I mean, really, this is two separate pools. If you take a look at college coaches, how many of those college coaches were wildly successful players? Many of them are just people who coached high school, and then they coached Division III, and they coached Division I. But no matter, Goodell has to pretend obeisance to this ridiculous lawsuit. So Goodell's memo is his first reported comments since former Dolphins head coach Brian Flores filed that lawsuit. In the memo, Goodell says the league will reevaluate all policies, guidelines, and initiatives relating to diversity, equity, and inclusion, including as they relate to gender. The league will also retain outside experts to assist in this review. He says racism and any form of discrimination is contrary to the NFL's values. We have made significant efforts to promote diversity and adopted numerous policies and programs, which have produced positive change in many areas. However, we must acknowledge that, particularly with respect to head coaches, the results have been unacceptable. So not unacceptable with regard to special teams coaches or offensive line coaches or D-line coaches, but with results of head coaches, all you have to do is see that there are not enough black head coaches. Now, they're gauging that by percentage of the NFL that is black. Well, why not gauge it by percentage of the American population that's black? Because that looks more proportional. Why aren't there 3% of head coaches who are Asian? Why aren't there 0.5%, 0.3% of the NFL's players who are Jewish? Why not? Anyway, Goodell says, we will reevaluate and examine all policies. We are retaining outside experts. Our goal is simple. Make our efforts and those of the clubs more effective so the real and tangible results will be achieved. Now, here is the hilarious thing. The folks who are using charges of racism as a tool of power, they're giving away the game now. I mean, they're really, really giving away the game. And it's pretty hysterically funny. So, for example, Stephen A. Smith is very pissed. Why is Stephen A. Smith pissed? Well, I mean, first of all, it's a day ending in Y, so Stephen A. Smith is pissed. But Stephen A. Smith is also pissed because after Brian Flores was fired, the Dolphins hired to replace him the San Francisco 49ers offensive coordinator, Mike McDaniel. So Mike McDaniel is multiracial. Right? McDaniel is the league's fourth minority head coach. This is not good enough for Stephen A. Smith, and Mike McDaniel is multiracial. So here he was explaining that, no. You see, when we accuse the NFL and the Dolphins of racism, what we mean is only racism against my friends. So here's Stephen A. Smith.
When we look at Mike McDaniels, we wish him nothing but the best. What did you say? He's mixed? Is that what you said, Molly?
Multiracial is how he identifies.
That's how he identifies himself, multiracial.
Yeah, multiracial.
Okay, fine. No problem. This was a conversation last week about black men. What I'm saying is the conversation last week pertaining to the Brian Flores situation is the scarcity of black men who have been given opportunities to be head coaches in the National Football League.
His father is of black descent, by the way. So, what? But again, it's only about the black people that Stephen A. Smith says it's about. By the way, you want to know the real proof in the pudding? This is the best one. Okay, so the Houston Texans hired Lovey Smith. First of all, crappy hire. Lovey Smith was not a good football coach. Okay, just going to put it out there as a Bears fan, Lovey Smith was not a good football coach. And by the way, in his last couple of years in the NFL, which is in terms of as a head coach, his actual stats were garbaggio. He has a career 92-90 record, which is not a stellar record in the NFL. He used to lose in the playoffs like pretty much every year. He had two good seasons early on. In 2004, he went 5-11 with the Bears. And then in 2005, they went to the NFC divisional game. And this is when Brian Urlacher was on the team. They went 11-5. Then they went 13-3 and went to the Super Bowl and lost with Rex Grossman as quarterback. You can't put that on Lovey Smith. Rex Grossman was not a very good quarterback. But then he basically was terrible the rest of his Bears career. They were mediocre every single year. He couldn't develop a quarterback no matter what he did. And then he went to Tampa Bay in 2015. And his record with Tampa Bay was a whopping 8-24. And now, lest you think that is a good record, that means that he won 8 times and lost 24 times for a winning percentage of .250. So Lovey Smith is not like some great shakes as a head coach. But the Houston Texans decided to promote Lovey Smith to their head coaching role. Apparently, they decided that they were going to interview 3 candidates twice. Josh McCown, the Philadelphia Eagles defensive coordinator, Jonathan Gannon, and Brian Flores. Okay, so they actually interviewed Flores. Herein lies the problem, and this is the really funny part. So after they hired Lovey Smith, Brian Flores then said, so Brian Flores put out a statement about Lovey Smith, and this is my favorite thing. Okay, because supposedly this is just about empowering black men, right? This is the only reason why he filed the lawsuit was to empower black men. Well, actually, Brian Flores is upset that Lovey Smith got hired. Quote, this is from his lawyer's statement. Mr. Flores is happy to hear that the Texans have hired a black head coach, Lovey Smith, as Mr. Flores' goal in bringing his case is to provide real opportunities for black and minority candidates to be considered for coaching and executive positions within the NFL. However, we would be remiss not to mention that Mr. Flores was one of 3 finalists for the Texans head coach position. And after a great interview and mutual interest, it is obvious the only reason Flores was not selected was his decision to stand up against racial inequality across the NFL. So they hired a black guy, Lovey Smith, and Brian Flores is like, you're still racist because you didn't hire me. Yeah, we know. We know. I mean, we know what the agenda here is. Come on. And this is always the agenda from the left. It's just this shtick. It's a ridiculous shtick. Okay, and the Washington Post has a piece in the opinion section today. Same kind of shtick. Quote, I used to work on the Hill. The Dear White staffer's Instagram account is a long overdue reckoning. It's by a woman named Melissa Sullivan. And she talks about how she landed an internship on Capitol Hill and people were abusing her because she was a first-generation Latina American. And then there is this new Instagram account by a bunch of people of color called Dear White Staffers on Instagram that is supposed to be ripping into the treatment of people of minority status in the legislative offices. And so she says she's very happy about all of this. She says, in response to that launch, hundreds of current and former Hill staffers began submitting anonymous stories about their bosses, pay inequity, sexual harassment, racism, and the harmful consequences of working on Capitol Hill, drug use, depression, and anxiety. Now, here's the thing. If you actually have been sexually harassed in a congressional office, that's a lawsuit, is it not? Where are the lawsuits? People are pretty litigious in this country. If actually you've been experiencing real pay inequity in violation of civil rights law, where are the lawsuits? Especially because it sounds like this is a really bipartisan or maybe a Democrat issue. Where are the lawsuits? If you're accusing people of racism, you have a lawsuit on your hands. So where's the lawsuit? And the answer is there is no lawsuit. What is the end goal, according to this piece? Quote, the survey has spurred an unprecedented conversation about salary disparities and how staff can institute more workplace protections. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and a handful of other members now openly say they support unionization efforts for Hill staff. Yeah, there it is. The Democratic Party buying off all of their own racism and supposed sexism and all of this by saying it's time to unionize, which is precisely what they wanted to do in the first place. Charges of racism as just another tool in the portfolio toward the pursuit of power, as always, as always. It's never about the data. It's never about the actual on-the-ground situation. Because when people are sexually harassed, we all agree, bad, punishable. When people are hit with actual racism, we all agree, very bad. In some cases, punishable, depending on the kind of racism you're receiving under law. Okay, but that's not what they want. That's not what the left wants. What the left just wants is to throw out accusations of things that they can't verify and then get you to kowtow to them and give them enormous power. That's what they want on every subject, from COVID to race, on all of them. I know what you're thinking. It's time to binge some more Ben Shapiro videos. Well, you are right. You should. But first, like and subscribe. Perfect. I'll see you in the next video.